So, have you gotten your hands on this year's new iPhone yet? Usually the Pro series is more popular, but this year it's actually the standard model that's getting more love. Perhaps it's because it came with a lot more surprises. The Pro is in stock pretty much everywhere, but pre-orders for the standard model are already backed up to the end of November. For users with an iPhone 15, 16 or older, what's it like upgrading to the 17? In this video, we've gathered 3 generations of the standard model and we'll do a 3-part comparison of function, camera and performance to see if this year's model is worth upgrading. As a Pro user myself, I have to admit every year I'm a little envious of the standard model. It has more colors, a lighter and thinner body and a more minimalist design. Starting with the 15, they all have a more rounded frame which feels better in the hand. Plus, since they all have the dynamic island, it's actually hard to tell them apart just by holding them. But if you're using one with the flat edges and the notch, you can tell it's an older model at a glance. The action button and camera controls, introduced with the 16, are still considered by many to be Apple's most useless designs in the last couple of years. But it's true that those who like it, and those who don't would rather buy a case that covers up the button. On the back, because the last 2 generations switched to a side-by-side camera layout, they support shooting spatial photos and videos. You can't view them on the phone, of course, but what if Apple releases affordable glasses that everyone can buy in the future? So when you think of it, you might as well just shoot some. On the front, the most interesting thing to talk about is the high refresh rate screen on the 17. Honestly, when I was watching the keynote, I was actually getting a little excited. Promotion is finally no longer exclusive to the Pro models. The first thing you'll notice is that the screen bezels on these 3 standard models have gotten thinner year after year, so much so that with similar overall dimensions, the 17 has increased to 6.3 inches. According to our lab tests, all 3 screens maintain Apple's high standards for brightness and color. The typical and peak brightness levels are nearly identical. The 17 series has higher local brightness outdoors, and it also has a minimum brightness of 1/9, so it won't blind you in dark environments. The overall brightness uniformity for all 3 is also maintained above 96%. Beyond that, on this year's 17, the screen on the standard model and the Pro are, you could say, almost identical. It has a high refresh rate, always-on display, AR anti-reflection, and the 2nd-gen ceramic shield. It's no exaggeration to say it's worth upgrading to the 17 just for this screen. But honestly, in terms of system functions on these current devices, the experience across these 3 models is pretty much the same. The same liquid glass, the same lock screen, and the same unusable mainland China version of Apple Intelligence. Even on the iPhone 17 with the A19 chip running the current iOS 18, you'll still occasionally run into minor frame drops and bugs. If you're hoping for more fun features, you might finish transferring your data, see the exact same desktop icons, run into a few bugs, and have a moment of confusion thinking, is this really a new phone? For those of you who love photography, if you play around a bit, you'll definitely find that the differences in camera features are actually quite significant. First, there are the photographic styles introduced on the 16, which is basically a well-regarded set of color palettes. You can achieve the color curve function in a professional workflow simply by sliding the coordinate axis. You can freely edit before and after taking the photo. However, the previous generation offered less room for creative expression in terms of photographic style. The parameters were also hard-coded into the photo, making them unrecoverable. If you're using this older model and a friend happens to send you photos taken with the newer model via airmail, when you click Edit, you discover that the color palette works even on older models. Does this mean Apple deliberately excludes older models from using the same color palette? Of course, this is a misunderstanding. On the iPhone 16, the color palette is only available due to camera upgrades. It can take heavily modified high photos with a more distinctive look, and the photos have a dedicated layer that ensures a good color gamut regardless of how you adjust the color palette. Older camera models lack this hardware capability. Since real-time preview and image capture are unavailable, editing is the only option. If you don't believe me, try editing photos taken with your old phone on your new phone. You still won't find a color palette. If you're an iOS 16 user, upgrading to iOS 26 will also reveal a new pearlescent preset similar to the one in iOS 17. It's said to be the result of Apple's extensive user research and development, making the image more flattering for Asian skin tones, enhancing complexion. Here's a comparison for you to see. Besides photography, the three generations of models also differ significantly in video recording capabilities. On the iPhone 15's camera interface, you can long press the shutter button to record video. Due to performance limitations, only 1920 resolution, the same as the preview frame, can be shot. There is no HDR 3.4 aspect ratio video, so the finished product looks more like a photograph. With the 16, the improved camera allows for long press recording of 4K HDR in its full 9:16 aspect ratio, which many people prefer compared to the previous 3:4 ratio. They hope it can be changed back or given an option. This change actually made the older 15 series more popular with users. Another upgrade is that the 17 supports a centered front-facing camera, a feature that is now standard on all new phones this year. Simply put, it looks good no matter how you shoot it, horizontally or vertically. Horizontal aspect ratio videos also don't need to be rotated separately, which makes them look crooked. Because it's a system and function, it can even achieve person tracking in some third-party video calls. As for the dual camera simultaneous shooting function, the older model could achieve a similar level using a third-party camera, so I won't go into too much detail. Now that we've covered the imaging capabilities, let's look at some actual sample photos for comparison. First, the conclusion. In default shooting mode, you can barely distinguish the differences between the three generations of models. If I didn't specify the camera model, could you tell which one it was? Whether it's the ultra-wide 1x or 2x zoom, the imaging style is almost identical. While other manufacturers are pursuing different tonal values, Apple defaults to its default exposure style. In complex lighting scenes, the three cameras may handle details of light and shadow slightly differently. With the same 48 megapixel main camera, if you zoom in on the details, it's hard to pick a winner between the three. What's surprising is that even after the 17's ultra-wide was upgraded to 48 megapixels, the advantage isn't that obvious. Take this set of photos. When zoomed in and without me telling you the models, you can probably spot that the one on the right is a bit weaker on detail, but for the two on the left, can you tell the 16 from the 17? It's the same in low light scenes. In terms of color, exposure, and detail, all three are on the same level. Even the classic lens flare is no different. And for our last blind test, can you tell which is which? For daytime video recording, whether it's the main or ultra-wide camera, the color and detail from all three are at the typical Apple standard, with almost no difference. But in low light, that's where the differences start to show. The 15's ultra-wide is almost completely dark, while the other two can still capture some building details. On the main camera, our 17, in its current software version, has a noise reduction algorithm that's a bit too aggressive. The sky also shows some color noise, but this is a rather extreme scene, and its performance is very stable for the most part. And finally, the lens flare. Again, all three are almost identical with no difference. There's another shared advantage. During our use, we almost never got a blurry shot. Whether day or night, the imaging is very consistent. After comparing them, you can see that the imaging of the three generations in both quality and style is almost identical. With video, you can only see a difference in extreme scenes, and it's really hard to say which one is better. But in terms of features and user experience, like the color palette and center stage I mentioned, the newer models are definitely better. Now for the performance test, which might be what Apple users care about the least. Let's let the actual tests do the talking. In honor of kings, all three are close to 60 FPS, but the 15 still has some frame jitter, so it definitely can't compete with the new models. At the time of this review, the 17 hadn't been updated for 120 FPS yet, so we can only compare them at 60 FPS. Under the same settings, its power consumption is 0.2 watts lower than the previous generation, and the temperature is also similar. In a half hour of Zenless Zone 0, the 15 only gets 48 FPS. The 16 and 17 are both around 56 FPS with similar jitter, but the 17 runs cooler. In the more extreme half-hour Honkai Star Rail test, even with a higher 883p rendering resolution, the 17's frame rate is still the highest, reaching 56 FPS. Its temperature is also the lowest of the three, though its power consumption does reach 5.5 watts. From the gaming performance, we can see that the 15 is still fine for Honor of Kings, but it starts to struggle with more demanding games. The overall performance of the 16 and 17 is similar, but the 17 has better power efficiency. This better efficiency is also reflected in its battery life. In our 5-hour battery test, the 17 came out on top with 29% remaining. And as you can see in the later social feed tests, even with a 120 Hz high refresh rate, its power consumption in each segment is lower than the other two at 60 Hz. In the test to depletion, the 17 lasted almost an hour longer than the 15, reaching 6 hours and 8 minutes. As for charging, using a 40-watt charger, a half-hour charge brought the 15 to 60%, the 16 to 55%, and the 17 to 69%. The time to a full charge was 93, 105, and 78 minutes, respectively. Looking at all the test data, this year's standard 17 shows very clear improvements in performance, battery life, and charging compared to previous models. And the high refresh rate screen didn't cause faster battery drain, it actually became the better solution. And don't forget, the 16 and 17 support adaptive power in iOS 26. It can learn your usage habits and in a nearly unnoticeable way, slightly reduce brightness and performance to preserve battery life. The 15, however, does not support this. Another long-term consideration is that the 16 and 17 have 8 GB of RAM, while the 15 only has 6. Plus, it doesn't support Apple Intelligence, which will likely be a major dividing line in future system updates. Finally, on price, all three generations started at $5,999, but this year the 17 starts at 256 GB. It's also eligible for the government subsidy. Combined with a high refresh rate screen, it really does seem like a better value than the Pro, especially since the price difference is about a third. I wonder how many of you watching have an older Pro and are planning to switch to this year's standard model. If you're holding the previous Gen 16 and aren't sensitive to high refresh rates, the upgrade might not feel as significant. But if you have an iPhone 15 or an even earlier model, upgrading to the 17 will be an improvement in every aspect. But if you're on a budget or just need a backup phone and you don't need features like Apple Intelligence or Pearl Preset, you can find a standard 15 in good condition on the secondhand market for just over $2,000. So after watching this video, what's your budget and which model will you get? For those not planning to buy, I hope you've still learned a lot about these three generations. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments for discussion. This is YLab, I'm Xia Ren, and we'll see you in the next one.